Hi, hello, my name is Gabriel, and welcome to another video, and I'm really excited for this one. We are reviewing, in a short positive review format, The Angels After Man, the conclusion to the Angels Before Man trilogy. I am so stoked for this. If you've not seen the other two videos, I've been working on reviewing these since ever I discovered them, and I really love that series, and I'm really happy to be talking about them. Before we go any further, I just wanted to put a spotlight on a project that I really love. It should still be up by the time I publish this. There might be only a couple of days left. However, the author of this series has commissioned Fox Raz, which is an artist that is currently working on the visual novel for the series, to be designing and producing a tarot deck, and it is currently live on Kickstarter. I got mine and I'm just gonna spotlight it. If you're watching this video and you don't know about it, I highly recommend checking it out. The cards are so beautiful and I think they're really worth checking out, so I'll leave a link in the description. In classic short positive review format, I'm going to start with a more vague idea. I'm not going to go into super big details or like super spoiler stuff. Still going to talk about what I like in the first half, but it's mainly going to be like vibe stuff and like stuff to hook you essentially. And then the second half, I'm going to go a bit more in details about characters, but especially the themes, because there's a lot of the themes that I want to talk about this. There's a lot I got from this book that I want to talk about. So obviously I recommend reading the book first before watching anything, but the first half is completely safe to watch if you have not read it, but I recommend to read it before watching the second half. Let's start with a bit of context if you don't know anything about this series. You can obviously see my video, but Angels Before Man is the retelling of Satan's fall told in a queer perspective. It is a very difficult book. It is a very rough book that tackles a lot about what it means to be queer. To me, that book is really representative of what it is to be like a vulnerable person in a world that doesn't want to see you being vulnerable, and like how to reclaim that power for yourself even though it makes you reprehensible to everything else. It is about breaking the status quo. This book is very beautiful and sad, and it's about love, it's about heartache, it's about wanting your own power. I think it is one of the most important piece of queer literature in this decade so far, and I love it so much. But this is the beginning of this franchise, and then after that, the second book is Angels and Man, and that one story is specifically about the flood. It is about the Watchers, so those angels from the Book of Enoch that came to visit humans to see a bit like what was going on Earth and how they got corrupted with humans and fell in love. And that book is a lot about love. It's about fear. It's about like feeling yourself becoming different, becoming othered for existing as yourself. It's a book that's very anxious. It's very grueling and sad, and like the theme of that book is very much about like how to be yourself in a world that doesn't want you, and discovering that like propaganda that you've been fed is not all that it's cracked up to be. So that's the second book, and then we are now at the third. And something that all of these books share, and the through line of this story, is Satan. It is Lucifer's story, and contrarily to some other retellings of like mythological figures, and I'm thinking here of Medusa because it's another one that I really like, but unlike some other retellings, this story is not trying to prove to us that Lucifer was the good guy. Actually, it humanizes him, it makes him a full, complete person, but it doesn't disregard the fact that he's done some fucked shit. And I think that's very important to have him being this complex, multi-layered character. He is the heart of the story, and he is both the pain and the joy, and sometimes you're disappointed in him, but most of the time you just want him to succeed because he deserves it. This story is the story of the apocalypse. This story happens more than 2,000 years after the last one, and we pick up on all of these characters and the way that they grew over these like interminable times, and how they've seen the world evolve, and we see all of the angels and all of the demons that we love so much, and we see still more of Lucifer's descent into sadness. But the crux of this story, because it is the apocalypse, is the Antichrist and his rise. So here's the no spoilerly hook. The apocalypse is happening. Metatron ascended. He was a human that ascended to being an archangel, and he wants to follow God's will, and God says that it is time for the apocalypse. So God, Metatron, and his angels are planning for the apocalypse to unfold. At the same time, Dina, the youngest angel, gets in communication with a star, Absinthus, which begs him to start the apocalypse because that's how they can be together in the end, is if the apocalypse happens. At the same time, on Earth, Lucifer has not been in hell in a while. He's been letting all of this on the shoulders of Baal, and the reason why Lucifer is on Earth is to get closer to Babylon, to understand the root of evil, to be able to squander it, because he wants, above everything, to stop the apocalypse from happening. And then on the third sphere, there are the humans, and Tadeo. Tadeo's story is really sad. Something terrible happened to him when he was a kid, and he died. But he came back, and he came back as something powerful, something strong, something that can defend itself. And that ends up being the Antichrist. But he doesn't want to destroy the world, he wants to save it. And so the story and the hook of the story is these three spheres of character trying to pull string, either to get the apocalypse to happen or to stop it, and sometimes acting selfishly in between those, causing effects that they couldn't imagine. Ultimately, it is a story about friendship, about seeing each other. It's a story about Lucifer's following his depression, and Lucifer is not happy in this. He's very terribly sad, and Tadeo and Dante find each other, and Dante is a military guy that is there in part to stop the Antichrist. Then the angels, just sadness about having to leave everything behind. It's a story about what would you do in the end times, especially if you have a task to do according to the end times. Would you let that happen? Would you just follow blindly? Would you just abandon everything and just seek community? Would you save yourself? Would you save your family? Those are all themes that this book explores, and it is written, as all of them, super lyrically, super beautifully, and the hook is really about the apocalypse is happening, and these people are trying to either cope with it, stop it, or cause it to happen quicker. And I think that's really cool, and I think you should read it. This book is overall a lot more action-packed than either of the other two, especially Angels Before Man. There's a lot of breathing room, there's a lot of time where the characters get time to talk and to explain what's going on, but there's a lot more things going on. It's the end of the world. There's a lot more actions all throughout, and it is very punchy, and it is very interesting and intriguing, and it's very it makes you want to turn the page. You are always waiting to see what comes next, in a way that ABM was not as much. Just, I love ABM, but ABM is a lot more slice of life-y, almost very loungy, with terrible stuff happening, of course, but I just really like how this book especially was really punchy. So we're going to the spoilery part now. What I love most about the short positive reviews that I'm able to do is that it doesn't necessarily focus super on everything that's going on. It takes into context the fact that you've read it before. So I'm not going to go beat by beat, but I'm going to talk about my favorite characters and the favorite moments from these characters. I really loved Lucifer in the first book, and I really liked Samyaza and Azazel's relationship in the second one, but I think that what Tadeo and his family have going on is one of the most interesting dynamic I've seen in reading in a while, because I think the dichotomy of being the Antichrist, being quite literally born and created to destroy, but then just so deeply only one to create and to save everything, I think it says a lot. I think it really shows the way how personal personality act in that way, and it really gives you a break to be what was created for you is not necessarily where you belong. Your faith is not necessarily what someone else applies to you, and I think that's really powerful. And ultimately, that's why he is able to become the Antichrist when no one has before. Usually Satan's able to stop them, but he can't there. Tadeo, to me, is such an interesting character. He is so traumatized and sad. I think there's something profoundly sad about him following blindly Dina, because in his mind, right, he loves angels, he believes in the Bible, he believes in God, and so if an angel of God tells him that's what we need to do to save the world, he cannot fathom the idea that that angel would be lying to him. Their interpersonal relationship is so complex and ends up being cruel almost, and I think that really worked for the book. But then Dina is himself being corrupted in his corruption arc by love, by having finally someone that sees him as something more, something that can be wielded and not something just to see or just to like act towards. And I think that Dina as a character is super interesting. I think he's really tragic in the way that he wants to have a purpose, but he doesn't want that purpose to be internalized. He truly wants someone to tell him what to do and to tell him that he's doing a good job. And I think that's a really complex relationship, especially for someone that is like the spark of the story. He creates everything else that's going on, and especially with the way that his story arc ends, in the way that he does all of that for Absinthos, and then Absinthos dies. His reaction of like, I lost everything, I destroyed everything for this and I lost it, and how devastating it is. I think these two have a really interesting dynamic at the beginning of the story. And then there's his relationship with Dante, and I think Dante is so unique as a character because he's like the embodiment of a trolley problem. There are 3 tracks, and one of them is destroy everything to get my parents back in my family. The second one is destroy my family and the rest of the world to have my new boyfriend. And the third one is destroy my boyfriend and my family to save the world. And in none of those, anything is like sunshine and rainbows. And I think that is such a unique perspective for a character, and I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. And like, obviously the end of his character is so devastating. And can we talk about Joanna? To me, she is the beating heart of the story. Her whole point is to show that there's something more. She is the only one from all of this that is truly selfless in the way that she goes. She tells her adoptive dad, Archangel Michael, that she does not give a fuck about like heaven and the afterlife, and she doesn't want to be saved. She just wants the world to keep living as it is, and she's gonna do everything for that. And like, she just wants to save everyone and keep peace and keep the earth. And like, I think this is so valuable. And to me, she's the beating heart of the book. She is the one that like keeps the hopes up. She is the opposite of Dante. To me, they are ideologically completely different. Dante would burn the world to have his family. Joanna would let her family die if that means that the world can continue and she can rebuild. A lot of the things that she does are not good for the people around her. Like, she hurts them, but ultimately all that she wants is for the greater purpose of saving the world. And I just think that's like such a good way to represent like the end of the world, is having like that dynamic, and Tadeo stuck between the two of them. As much as I love the angels in the first 2 books in the series, I think that the best part of the story is everything the humans are going through. And I think that the representation of what people would do at the end of the world in the community building, and I mean like a lot of it is cultural as well, but I think that the way that like they tackle the end of the world and what does it mean for the world to end and what do we do during the apocalypse was unique and heartwarming and beautiful. And then on the angel side, apart from Dina that I've already talked about, we have Michael, which is finally breaking his faith, finally stuck in between the like, this is my last ditch effort of impressing God and to finally follow in his footsteps and prove to him that I love him and that I will do everything, and it falls through. And then seeing this husk of a creature that has been for thousands of millennia being just focused on pleasing this one god that will never appreciate him for who he is, and that reality finally clashing with him towards the end of the book was so yummy and beautiful. And I think that his story was really well wrapped up, and the devastation of him, which is there since the beginning of the first book, is so thoroughly explored and interesting and beautiful. And I keep repeating myself, but I think it was really well thought out and I really loved it. And then the other angels and archangels were also really interesting. Their role was to prepare the world for the end of the apocalypse, and they don't want to do it. They were doing it because that's what their purpose is, because they're forced to do it, because that's what they know how to do, is to follow orders. But then seeing them slowly realize that that's not what they want to do was really, it was so touching. And I think it means a lot about the way that the world is going right now. And yeah, Asmodeus and Rosier are characters that I didn't love always. Like, I thought they were really good in Angels Before Man, and I thought they were like okay in Angels and Man, but I really, really, really loved them from Horns for Hell. I think that I understood a lot more of the dynamic. I think that Rosier is such a sad character. I mean, he's very relatable, but he's so, like, his infliction and everything that he's going through is just so, like, sad and quiet and, like, real. It's realistic. I don't know, I really like Rosiere's whole story arc. I thought that what they did with him and Asmodeus in this is really good. I think that them running away from hell and just like choosing each other always is something that is really beautiful and made the catharsis of their ending so much stronger, because like by the time that Asmodeus gets to die, it's like the first like big important character that you've like followed for like 3 books at that time dying, and like it hits hard because you know that he's not coming back and you know that Rosiere needs him. So then after that, Rosiere is just like not coping and just like a husk of who he used to be as well, and like dissociating is so sad. Let's talk about the Watchers. I think there is some context about the Watchers that is definitely a lot stronger if you've read the short stories, but the implications that because Satan wanted a child, he had conversations with Azazel. Azazel was the only one who did not succumb to the madness of being like closed off for so long, and so the fact that he becomes a proxy leader of the Watchers was so interesting and cool, and I think that it really showed like the torture and the like cruelty of hell, and the fact that like it turned him cruel more than the other Watchers, because the other Watchers are like animalistic at that point. They're very hard and like not humans at all, but he's cruel. He wants revenge was really powerful. I thought that sequence of events were awesome and really tragic, and it was really cool, and I think they're inherent like seeking revenge, especially with the ending, because like it ties in with Joanna. They don't care about the end of the world, they don't care about like who to save, they just want revenge, until Samyaza peers true, I guess. He takes a moment to just like essentially tell his lover, we are better than this, and then they don't, and then they leave. And this book is beautiful and tragic. I'm just like trying to search how I can explain it differently, but I just think that like that specific story was so reminiscent of like of my own worldview. I believe in the power of violence, and this is going to be a bit personal in the sense that like these are my personal politics coming out, but I do believe in the power of violence. I do think that violence is a great tool and is oftentimes necessary. However, I have a lot of difficulty with the origin of that violence and the goal of that violence. I think that violence for violence sakes and violence for retribution's sake does not help. It only festers anger and hate, and it just keeps making everybody involved miserable. And like I'm not like I'm not trying to politic anyone, but like in my brain the goal of violence should always be to be heard and not to hurt the other, if that makes sense. And I think that that is something that this book tackles extraordinarily well. I think this is ultimately what the message of the book that I retain, because whether we are talking about Kima or the Watchers, or even Michael in a way, and even Rosiere by the end of the book, these are characters that ultimately violently seek revenge, and they're also the characters that end up the most sad by the end of the book. Let's go ahead and talk about one of my favorite characters probably of the decade, Satan. If you're watching my 2 other videos, you know how much I fucking loved Lucifer in the first one, and how much his evolution and his transition into Satan in the second one felt really important and good to me, and I think that this book really culminates his whole character into a perfect ending. This is full spoilers, by the way, because I really want to talk about it. So the first one is really his fall and his transition into Satan by the end of the book, because after getting assaulted and after deciding to leave everything behind to try to have a better life, he gets punished for it. And then the second book is very much him trying to like recreate what he knows and have a better life in a way. He is like the king of the demons. He is a cruel leader, but I think that deep down, and especially with the stories of Angel shorts, I think the reading of him being a cruel leader but trying to be fair and trying to do what he thinks is right is really prominent, and I really like that. That's what he is. Like, he's not a good person, he never has been, but he's trying to be as fair as he can, but while applying cruelty to make sure that he stays on top. When the story picks up, Satan has not been in hell in quite some time. I mean, he left Baal in charge, but he's doing his best, but Moloch is coming for his throat all the time. Then Asmodeus and Rosiere are just escaping all the time. So essentially, Satan's not there, and hell is worse because of it. but Satan's on Earth, and at first you don't necessarily understand what he's doing on Earth, but Satan is actually impersonating a lot of different humans, and he's trying to infiltrate their culture and their life to try to understand the source of evil. He stays in Babylon. He has this priest persona to try to get close to sinners to find them, but he also has this pop star called the harlot persona, in which he gets to stay close to like really rich men with. And it's very clear towards like the midpoint of the book that the reason why he's on Earth is to try to find his son. He's trying to find the Antichrist. So the backstory of Tadeo and the Antichrist in general is really, really sad. The way the story is set is that after Azazel had his own kid, Satan got really, really obsessed with the concept of having a kid of his own. He just wanted to create. He's always wanted to have what God had, which is the purpose of creating. And so that's why Azazel got to go out more, is because Lucifer wanted to learn from him how to make a kid. And then he did have a child with Nero, and then those were like some of the best moments of Satan's life. He finally got to have his own heir and his own kid, and like of course Cain counted, but like Cain was still human, and he wanted a demon of his own that would not age the way that other people do. He wanted something that he wouldn't have to lose. And then the demon crumpled in front of him and became the representation of all evil. And so Satan has to murder his child, but murdering his body would not kill him. He would just reform over and over and over again all over the world into more forms of evil, always respawning, always trying to end the world, which Lucifer really, really doesn't want to happen. He doesn't want God to win. He doesn't want the world to end. So for the past millennia, he's had to try to find the root of all evil and kill his son again and again and again and again. And this is where we find him at the beginning of the book, but for this time, he didn't realize that the reason why Tadeo is so different than the other antichrists is that Tadeo does not want to destroy the world. He wants to save it, which is why it makes him being the antichrist so heart-wrenching. Lucifer does not catch him at time. He's too late, because he wanted to save the world. Satan didn't see that he was the Antichrist. He was not there to shape him to destroy himself and to kill him. He was shaped by Dina and by the other angels and by Metatron and by the Bible and by the idea that by saving the world you need to destroy it. And so Tadeo becomes what Satan fears. And I just think that like twist / like concept is so powerful. It's so strong. It's so sad. And I just think that like Satan in the story is like very, very like emotionally driven, and I think he's very sad. He's a very sad character, but to me he always has been, and like that's something that I really appreciate in characters because that's a lot of what my characters are. I think that hiding sadness behind another emotion, usually anger, it's so powerful of an emotion. I feel like that's how a lot of people like interact with the world anyway, so I feel like there's something tangible there. But the way that like this Satan acts is so sad. And Michael is in a similar boat. He followed God until the end, thinking that that's what he needed to do, and he had to. But then he lies in the bed of his own making, and where it doesn't bring him happiness, and he stands alone. The final nail in his coffin is definitely the time that he brings Satan in front of God to be like, this is your monster. We can kill him right now, and God denies him because it's not the time yet. His plan is not complete. And then Satan has a very intense hate fuck with Satan, and then that's the end. No one is worth this. This is everything that he lives for, except maybe for Joanna. On the human side of things, Dante ends up betraying Tadeo because he wants to see his mother again, but then in the last second he realizes that he doesn't even know if his mother is still alive, and also that like he cannot sacrifice the love that he has for Tadeo. He saves Tadeo by sacrificing himself, and there's nothing left but ashes. Ultimately, this is what kills Tadeo as being Tadeo and what fuels the Antichrist in him. He becomes monstrous, at least physically, and this is the version of Tadeo that is broadcast to hell by the Leviathan. And like, this conversation in hell showed that he's not gone, because he had a discussion with Satan, and they could see how different they were as people, and how even though both of their purposes were to save the world, at least Tadeo was not jaded. But even still, the death of Dante is what took him away from kind savior that he was before. Tadeo is just like I just wanted to have this world. And then Lucifer's like, okay, but this world doesn't belong to us, it belongs to God, so I need to destroy him. And then I don't want to go by all of the details, but by the end of the story, and that's something that's represented in this piece, is that Lucifer takes part of the body of a star and becomes a god. He emerges into like this kind of star, all-powerful creature, and like that star is Absinthos, which has to sacrifice himself for that. So Dina is all over the place with that. Otherwise, Asmodeus dies in the Hellfire earlier, so Rosier is also all over the place and like sad and angry and like unable to speak about it. He's just so distraught. And in that god form, Satan has the final one-on-one against God, which, go read it. The actual scene is like two deities fighting through the space-time continuum and like merging timelines and fighting through the cosmos to try to like destroy each other, and it is very, very beautiful. But then after that, there's a scene that just kills me. So the last few pages are not Satan, it's Lucifer in heaven with Michael and Baal, and they're having a fine little moment, and they're appreciating finally going back home, finally appreciating this heaven, this paradise without a god. But then he realizes that this is but a dream, this is but a memory, and he doesn't remember stuff correctly. He wants to, but he can't. The last two chapters of the book are very lyrical, but I love that ending. The first one is Tadeo's afterlife, where he's in this kind of Garden of Eden place where he's trying to look for the people that he loves, the people that made him live, without being able to find them. But he doesn't give up. His ending is him being like, I will find you. I love you, and I always will, and I will find you. And the last chapter is so beautiful. It's so sad. It's very lyrically written. It is kind of open-ended, but to me it is very much a mix of Satan and Lucifer retelling their story. It is the bookend of the franchise, of like him just like confirming that he is retelling from his point of view and how he lived through all of this, and how to this day he sometimes feels like an angel even though he doesn't know what that means anymore. They don't know if God exists, they don't know who exists, but they know one thing: they still worship, but they worship themselves, they worship each other. And then the final line that I adore so dearly is simply, the only God is love. So beautiful, open-ended, tragic, and lyrical, and I think it's some of the best writing that Rafael Nicolás has done so far. And this is the end of the series. I think that this book specifically really delved into community and community building. It delves into different kinds of resistance, but also different kinds of pleasures and the way to access those pleasures. I just think that this series is fucking fantastic, and I really love it, and I'm really happy that it ended on such a high note for me. And now just to talk a little bit about this piece, while there's a bit of a montage behind the scene. I really conceptualize this piece as being a mirror to my original Angels Before Man piece. Lucifer, in this case it is Satan, in the foreground, my favorite scene of the book, and then in the background we have the eyes of the deity of the book, and then a bunch of things happening in and around the eyes. So I worked on a piece for quite a while. It took me a couple of weeks of on and off to work on it during my job, obviously. But I really wanted it to be yellow, not only because it is the color of the book, but also I've talked about it before. Whenever I read, I also get influenced a lot by the way the book makes me feel, to see colors and to like imagine a color palette for the book. And this color palette was so yellow to me. It was ochre, it was like gross and post-apocalyptic like colors. So I really wanted to represent that, but also purple, just because it is an opposite. I wanted to include a bit more red, like that pinkish red that I used for the original piece for Angels Before Man. I did a bit on the Leviathan and on Satan's jewelry, but not more because I didn't want it to clash. And then again, just because I just referred to it, the original Angels Before Man piece had the same eye motif because I wanted to take that again. It was like a part 2 of that piece, but in that the background of the eyes was blue because it was God's eyes, but this is not. This is Satan's eyes, because Satan is a god by the end of the book. So that's what I wanted to represent. We can see the Leviathan grabbing Satan to bring him back to hell, because it just worked really well. And then the front of the piece, it's one of my favorite scenes of the book. It's when Satan is brought in front of God and he just laughs in his face. And it was just such a good scene, and I immediately went to sketching it because like it was so evocative and I really loved it. And then in the background I have on one side more of like the humans and the demons and the Antichrist, and on the other I have more of the angels, Absintos, and then Michael and Joanna. I think that you can really see all of the like work that I've been putting into like my illustration style coming together with this, and I'm really proud and happy with this. I love the texture, I love the colors, I think it is striking. And yeah. So thank you so much for coming around. Sorry for the long, short, positive review. I just really needed to talk about this book. I needed to for myself. In a way, making this video was very cathartic. Made me realize that this series was over. Feels like looping the loop, if that makes sense, and that makes me really happy. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for coming around, and I'll see you someday for another video. I have a couple of projects in the works that I'm putting more on my plate, so I don't know when I'll be able to record again. I'll still create, I always do, so you can always follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Tumblr. Those are kind of the main place that I post, but anyway, I'll see you soon.